Hello, everyone, and welcome back to a new episode on the Aging Together podcast. Our guest today is a retired nurse with nearly 3 decades of experience, including 22 years in the emergency room and time as an administrator for a memory care facility for individuals with Alzheimer's and dementia. Phyllis Anderson is the founder and author of Carefolio, a medical healthcare journal designed to empower individuals and caregivers to take charge of their health and effectively track caregiving details. Phyllis's passion for health advocacy stems from her extensive nursing background and personal experiences. She now dedicates her time to supporting caregivers through education, inspiration, and practical tools. As the CEO of Carefolio and a top leader in health-focused network marketing, she combines her expertise in healthcare with a focus on prevention, gut health, and holistic wellness. A lifelong entrepreneur, Phyllis is also a wife, a mother, and an advocate for living proactively. Her mission is to help caregivers navigate their journeys with hope, resilience, and resources to enhance their loved ones' care while prioritizing their own well-being. Phyllis, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much, Pooja, for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, I am so excited about this conversation because you have built something that is my daily bread and butter, and I'm so excited to hear you talk about it and explain everything that led up to it.
Good. I'm excited to share that.
Awesome. Let's start with your caregiving journey. I think you mentioned from supporting your parents to caring for your children. Fill me on that. Walk us through what that journey looked like.
Okay, so I was born the oldest of 8 kids. We lived in a tiny house, 1,000 square feet, probably. And so being the oldest of all those kids, I stepped right into a caregiving role, right? Being responsible, watching out for everyone's comfort, safety. Even my littlest brother would call me mama. And at first that was like, oh man, but I was his mama. I was his caregiver. And that was a sweet, endearing thing for me. So there was a lot of chaos in my home. And so I was there just to lighten the load for my mama. And what we were taught over and over again is many hands make little work. And so to finish off, to keep going, I at 18 was married. We had our first child. By the time I was 20, I had 2 kids. So I was well into that caregiving role by then.
Yeah, that's definitely the parentification of the eldest child, right? We talk about that a ton, especially in certain subcultures like the one I'm from. And the eldest child is often the fixer, right? The person who gets it done, the person who helps out. And so that definitely starts at an early age.
Yeah, it's the gift, I think, in taking on that role. So
yeah,
it doesn't always feel great, but in the end, looking back on things and the person it makes you, it's pretty amazing, actually. Lots of thankfulness.
Yeah, looking back on it. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
During, throughout your journey, what were some of the most challenging moments that you have faced?
I think with any caregiver, what we are always trying to do is find that balance. And my balance was, okay, I'm a mom and I want to have a career because I need to provide for these children. And, it really was just keeping my mind open and willing to try new things. And when I stepped into finding nursing and going down that road, it just really felt good. And I have something I can share later about that and how I found my calling. But it's really just finding that balance of like, how can I caregive for my children, my parents, or whoever else, and still fall into my purpose. And there's lots of tools around that I've learned over the years. But those were the moments.
I bet. Yeah. Well, were there any specific situations that sparked that passion for patient advocacy?
Yes. So when I was little, I had asthma really bad. And so I was always sick and therefore always questioning my body and why does it feel this way? And how come I can't breathe? And why am I getting these medications? And then I realized, when I take this medication, this is how it makes me feel. So it was just interesting. So I was always questioning health. And then that's when I just bumped into the idea of going to nursing school. That opportunity arose. And so a friend of mine said, who was a nurse, very like senior nurse at the time, she said, Phyllis, go volunteer, because she knew I had 2 little kids at home. She said, just volunteer first at the hospital and see if that's a good fit for you. And I was like, yeah, you know what? I don't even know if I can handle, no offense, the smells of the hospital. I kind of had some thoughts about that. And what was great is I took her advice. I volunteered at the hospital. A nurse asked me, I know you're not supposed to touch the patients, but could you come in here and help me? And this is like 1992 at the time, 93. And I was like, absolutely. I was like, oh, I wanted to get in there, you know? And so when I walked in, I found and what I saw impacted my life. It confirmed my calling, but it was a little older gentleman, very like frail in his last days. Now that I know he was in his end days, he couldn't speak, he couldn't see, he could not advocate for himself. And I was just overwhelmed. It always makes me a little teary, gets me a little emotional. But I was like, I want to be his voice. I want to be the voice for people like this. And so, see, there it is. It wells up every time. But advocacy is my heart. You know, that's when I found that. Back then, that word has never, ever left me. So I thank that little gentleman in his dying days for being that example to me of what was needed, because I know all of us want to have a person there to speak for us when we can't speak. And so I just know that advocacy or advocate, that word was planted back then.
That's such a wonderful story. And I love that it has resonated with you through all these years to the point where it still tears you up, you know?
Totally.
I love that. And speaking of tears, you know, there's plenty of those when we're caregiving. So how have you navigated the emotional and the practical demands of caregiving across different stages of life, right? Because that was probably what happened from parents to children. And how does that look, or what was different?
Yeah. So navigating through all of this, I knew that being such a young mom and the experience I had growing up and some chaos and things that we all have, right? Nobody has a perfect life, I don't think. If somebody's out there, you know, I'd love to meet you and hear your story. But just navigating that and fighting for my babies, you know, fighting so that they'd have a better life. Along with that came the sacrifices of creating a village around me. And so emotional and practical, gosh, I kind of was in like make it happen mode. And so I knew that I wanted to go to school and there was nothing going to stand in my way. I wanted to be a great mom too. So there's that balancing act again. But I just created a village. My husband was a fireman at the time, working 24-hour shifts. So he was not home. We had moved 5 hours from any support system, family at all, to get his first fire job. So I found neighbors. I was like, oh, they have kids. What school do your kids go to? Hey, maybe we can carpool. And so I found my tribe. And that's what I just encourage caregivers to do too, is don't do this by yourself. You do not have to do this by yourself. And if you have that thought that I'm in this alone, that is a belief system you need to break. So maybe there's some things too that I'll share today that will help you do that. But you said something funny, Pooja, and it did. I giggled inside. But as that firstborn caregiver from birth, you know, I am a fixer, and my husband sweetly calls me Fix It Phyllis. And so, however, when you are a fixer, you can get very frustrated. And there's a lot of emotions around frustration. To me, frustration always kind of triggered some anger. And now what I found as a tool is that I realize that sometimes people don't want your help, and it's okay. Maybe they're not doing things the way you want them done. But guess what? Like, we all get to be the person who we were created to be. And so therefore I have to honor that in myself, and I need to honor it in you, you know, meaning all of us. And so when you understand, like, gosh, we're all messy humans, right?
Yeah.
I can't control anyone. I can support you, and I can set some healthy boundaries around situations just to protect my mental health and my physical health.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And some words that I use, and I hope you guys can connect with this today, is if I need help, say that to yourself. If I need help, then ask who can help me, or who's even smarter than me right now. Like who is out there to help? Your brain is going to get busy figuring it out. And I promise you, something is going to land in your lap and you're going to be like, wow, there was the answer to that help I needed, because right now I feel helpless, right? How many of you can relate to that, the helplessness sometimes in caregiving? You
Yeah,
don't
I
have to
love
do it alone.
that. I touch on that a lot. Like with children, we have this whole like it takes a village mentality, and that same mentality doesn't always translate to end of life or elder care. And it's something that we definitely need to address, because it really does take a village for that side of the world too, right? For that end of the continuum as well. And so I love what you said about like building your tribe, whether it's neighbors, community supports, whatever it is who can help me.
Yes.
Look
Who
for the
can help me?
helpers,
Yeah.
right?
Because we think we need to just do it all ourselves. Like when you're that high performer, high achiever, you're like, I can do it. I can just do it. If I stretch the day past 24 hours, I can do it.
I know.
But it's impossible. So,
Yeah. I want to move into a little bit about your inspiration behind Carefolio. So, you went through all these challenges, you navigated all the caregiving roles. What inspired you to create Carefolio, and what unmet need were you hoping to address?
yeah. So the inspiration really came from crafting 5 binders or spiral bound notebooks that we'd taken off the shelf and brought into the home. So one of my best friends at 42 years old, you guys, she passed away of pancreatic cancer. And so she left an 8 and a 9-year-old behind. And so we had pulled together again that tribe. I'm telling you, the tribes are precious and priceless, because all of us girlfriends got together. Her husband could not mentally or physically handle it. And so we were there. We took over. We pulled a binder. We put it together. We organized everything we needed to do to stay on track. Okay. Because that is something that we were seeing. Like she was taking medications to help with pain, obviously, pancreatic cancer that had metastasized to her bones. It was everywhere. So she was in a lot of pain. So we had to make sure that nobody was giving her double the amount or not enough, et cetera, et cetera. And all her appointments, what we had to not only manage her, but her children too. Yeah. So keeping track of that was like, we just saw the value, and we were able to share that with the hospice nurse that came in, being able to say, look, this is what she's looked like in the last 24 hours. So the communication was brilliant. And being a nurse, we have handoff, right? We hand off report. It's important that not only are we telling the next nurse, oh, here's my notes, but like verbally going over that with each other. And so I saw the need in, my friend's home, because that's where we were caring for her. We were spending the night, 24-hour care at one point, and everything from who stocked the fridge to where are the kids going today. And so that was one reason. But my grandparents wanted to stay at home as long as possible. We tried to honor that as long as we could. And but through our documentation in this little spiral bound notebook we had at the time, we saw this is getting out of control. And if somebody from the outside came in looking, they would say, this is neglectful. Like they need more care. Even though we were trying to do our best and we were not harming them in any way, shape, or form. It was just that the care had gone outside of what lay people could provide anymore. And so it helped us to make an easy decision by seeing that documented. And then just other things, like another friend, she died at 52 of melanoma cancer. And she said, I heard you're creating this book, Carefolio, and I just need the medication section. I cannot keep track of these medications these doctors are giving me. They're all over the place, and I know I'm going to make a mistake. So you could feel, even my voice feels stressed, right? And maybe you guys are already feeling that at home. Well, once I handed that book to her, she was just like, okay, Now I can write it all down. It's right here at my fingertips, and I can communicate better with my doctors so they could all stay on the same page too. And my goodness, the list goes on. An aunt in hospice. And so it was at that time that I was like, oh man, I need to do this to provide, the organized medications. People cannot recall their medications when you end up in the emergency room. Like, that's something I saw 22 years of ER nursing. That is the very first question we're going to ask you when you present to triage is, what are your medications and what are your allergies? And most of the time people cannot tell me that. They would say the white pill, the yellow pill, the round blue one. Like, we don't know what those pills are. But if you come in with your medication list, like this book in front of you with all the things, I could easily grab that while you're dealing with your medical emergency, right? Because a lot of times it's pain, it's confusion, it's maybe a mental health crisis. And the last thing you're going to be able to recall is all these answers to the questions I'm firing at you. Mm-hmm. So, the unmet need is just feeling scattered and lost. Yeah. And this is just bringing it together and reducing the chaos, eliminating the chaos, having one easy to use system that ensures, like, your caregivers, whether you're a caregiver or a high performer, like even managing your own health. I want to also address that. This is not just for the caregiver in the home. This is for the caregiver, which means every person on this planet, child to aging parent, can use this form of documentation because, let's face it, nobody's prepared for the crisis. And that's the unmet need is when there's a crisis. I didn't say, hey, on April 3rd, I'm going to have a crisis. I should prepare myself for that. So it's really just being prepared now because it's not just this binder that I created filled with all these beautiful pages. It's a peace of mind in your hands.
Yeah. I'm smiling and nodding for those who are not watching us because, Phyllis, as you know, this is my bread and butter. This is what I do. I try to prepare families for the inevitable, for crisis situations before they happen. And just like you said, a lot of times people will say, well, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. And like you said, you don't plan your crises, right? Like, you don't know when you're going to need all this information. And similarly, having worked in the hospital system for nearly a decade, it's, a lot of these older adults come in and they have no idea about what their medications are, or who their doctors are. Maybe if they have some helpers going in and out of the house, they don't know who they are. And it's because their kids set them up for them, right? Like, there has to be a way to track all of this in a way that, one, is not only physically available, but two, it's ease of communication transfer. So that is something that I notice a lot too, where even with my own family, but I've seen, of course, with many patients, is that transfer of communication gets lost, right? It's a game of telephone when one kid is passing down information that because they were in the hospital with the parent, the doctors told them something, they're now relaying that in their perceived understanding to another child, and then they're passing it down to a third child. There's a lot of loss of communication there. And then the fourth child comes in and says, well, my brother told me that you said X, Y, and Z. And it's like, no, I didn't. That's not what I said, but if there's a way to just have written, that ease of communication transfer of medications, appointments, doctors, providers, like just everything, I think it's easier to hand over a binder and papers than it is to say, hey, I have to call this person, or I need to go fill this person in, or I'll have to ask this person.
It does. It just eliminates like redundancy or asking that question a million times. And as a nurse working on the floor, when I very first started nursing, I was on the telemetry floor, and I remember receiving the phone calls, and it would be this family member followed by another family member followed by another family member. And I thought, okay. And even as a brand new nurse, I said, whoa, this has to stop. I literally can't take care of your loved one because I'm here fielding all these phone calls. And so now we have things like Caring Bridge and different great programs to keep people on the same page. But that's another system, is have your point of contact, have your Carefolio, documentation. Like, it's just cut and dry.
Yeah. What features or functions of Carefolio reflect your own personal caregiving experiences, and maybe which ones did you add in because you thought that they would be nice to have?
Mm. Because I worked, you mentioned my 10 years in memory care facility. And what I learned, because I was not trained originally all in dementia, right? In the dementia world or memory loss. But what I found is that when you knew things about the person, right? The human being, when you knew things about them, you could strike up a conversation even when it just felt awkward, right? Because as the disease of dementia, Alzheimer's, et cetera, advances, excuse me, it gets harder to communicate. And so what I love about my very first section, I'll just bring it up here. Why not? It is an about me section. And the first page is your emergency medical form. This is what you would hand to paramedics if they had to come to your house. But then it flips right on into all about me. So it's everything from the people I love, the things I'm proud of, and important things to know about me, because these are conversation starters. And so if you have caregivers in the home, I mean, like my friend at 42, when she passed away, I mean, this would have been nice to have all of her things that she was proud of. And she didn't know that she was going to get so sick so fast and pass away so quickly. So like I'm saying, even now we can fill this out and be prepared for times like that. But so that was important to me because I saw the value in that and the reminiscing that goes a long way. And you can see their faces light up because you've just triggered a positive, wonderful memory for them. So this is where the dignity and just beautiful caregiving can come in. And then you're less frustrated because you're not like, I don't have anything to say. You're like, let me open up the book and let's find out how we can communicate better with them. Gosh, other things. We mentioned it, the medication list. So there's everything's tabbed. I don't know if you can see that there.
Mm-hmm.
Everything's tabbed for quick and easy access. And so medications is one of them. Activities of daily living, like what is the person's normal here? Because that's important. In the ER, I can look at somebody and go, man, they look sick, but I know what sick people look like. I don't know that just 24 hours ago, they were smiling and happy and having a conversation and these are the things they could do for themselves. So having a book like this with all these check marks would make it easy for medical professionals for sure to know, oh, we have a big change in condition here that we're looking at. And now we can treat them for, okay, this could be sepsis, or it triggers our mind of like, it helps us get to the root of what we're trying to do for them. So medications for sure. There's even a spot in here for the pharmacies, the emails, the passwords, like what doctor prescribed that? Who do we need to be calling? You can see all these things can get a little chaotic. And when they're everywhere, it's a mess. But having it all in one place, it's fast and easy. Calendar. The calendar section in here is great for like all events, right? Normal calendar events, but appointments. I even encourage people to track your symptoms there because you can open up your calendar page and show your physician, look, for 5 days in a row, I've had this abdominal pain, or I've had nausea, or I've had this migraine. It won't go away. And it also helps us realize, like I said, it's for anyone, when maybe your check engine light's about to come on, because it's that prevention over prescription and being proactive with your health that is what really I'm passionate about. And that's why I feel like this book can do that. And then the journal section, there is a nice big journal section for you to just write the way you're feeling, especially if you're on a journey. It is important to know anything that's out of the ordinary. Those are the things we would chart in nursing was out of ordinary, things for that person. Not every little thing. So don't feel like I have to journal all the stuff. No, just what's standing out today. And again, those are that you're painting this picture to hand off to the next caregiver or the medical professional. And gosh, if I can just share this one personal experience that just tells you exactly why I'm passionate about this journal portion is my mother-in-law just over about a year and a half ago now, she had created her own spiral bound notebook because this is really new. She didn't have this yet, but in her spiral bound notebook, she had been talking about her abdominal pain she'd been having, all the things the doctor was prescribing, each appointment that she had. And finally, one day she called us because it's my mother-in-law, and she said, "Hey, I am having so much pain." And she was caring for my father-in-law who had dementia. And I said, "You know what? My husband's coming over. He's got grandpa. Let me take you to the emergency room." Because I knew that this has been going on too long. The pain she was having was not normal. And I know in an ER setting, we're going to get a CAT scan. We're going to get your blood work. We're going to get to the answers fast. Well, thank goodness my sweet mother-in-law had been writing all this stuff down, because we could clearly tell them, here's how long it's been going on. Here's all the things that have been, like, from medications to tests. All these things have been ordered, guys, except for a colonoscopy and a CAT scan. Guess what her colonoscopy showed? Her CAT scan showed just an hour and a half later. Full obstruction related to a mass. 4 days later, she had 18 inches of colon taken out. Cancer. Praise God, there was nothing in the lymph nodes. So she's considered cancer-free, and all of her tests to this day are still negative. No chemo, no radiation, just surgery. So I know, doesn't it give you chills? Because she documented well. We've been watching her. So that's the thing, is this is your patient advocacy. Like, this is your advocacy tool, and your loved ones or people that are close to you is another form of advocacy. So that's your 2-pack punch right there, is having people like that and documenting well. So more things, tracking forms in here I have for vital signs and blood sugars. Those are 2 big ones that doctors want to know, because guess what? If you're tracking it well, it's also sending a sign to your physician that you're serious about your health. That's going to create a better relationship between the two of you, because so many times I worked in a doctor's office while I was going through training. A lot of patients don't care. They just want the pill. Let me pop it in my mouth and let me fix it that way. They didn't want the diet, the exercise. That's just too hard. They wanted quick fixes. Well, I think we're shifting a little. More people are very much about being proactive, being more involved in their care. And so by tracking your blood sugars and watching those numbers stabilize, you can quickly ask your doctor, "Hey, what do we need to do with my medications? Can we lower them? Can we get rid of them?" And same thing with your vital signs. So it's just helping you realize, ooh, when I eat that, my blood sugars rise. When I eat this or when I exercise, look what happens to my blood sugars. So you can make better decisions for your own health, which is brilliant, right? We want to be in charge of that as much as possible. And then your past medical history, knowing all the things. Like, if somebody asked me, when was my last mammogram? Still, right off the top of my head, I could not tell you. But when I go get my Carefolio, because I filled out my own in the very back portion here, I'll tell you exactly when it was done and when my next one is due. So it just takes away the thought of, like, when, where, how, what, why. It just minimizes errors too that can occur when you have the family members involved or third party people trying to keep track of things. Like, Pooja, you said it perfectly, like the game of telephone. It doesn't work. It's not good, and it's frustrating to people. But when you have a tool like this, and in the legal world, like, if it's not documented, it didn't happen.
True.
Like, that's definitely ingrained in our brains in the medical field. Documentation is so key. And so I've provided a tool to make that happen.
I love everything about this. And it's so validating to hear kind of your experience along with, what prompted you to create all these different sections, because 1000% it's every single one of these, right? Similarly, my mom and my grandma both have their own individual composition notebooks that they track everything in. They track their doctor's appointments, imaging, medications, like everything in there. And, I keep telling my mom she was an OT in her past life, because she always is on top of this stuff when it comes to managing health, appointments and care. But it's just it's so important. And I love the point you made about tracking vitals, because it's not just for fun. It's so that you can identify if there's a change in your norm so that you can act sooner and
Mm-hmm.
proactively. And I think that's a big piece that, we have a very reactive care system. And I think it's just not ingrained in culture for people to be on top of how they're feeling or how um, maybe certain numbers look off and they wait until it's too late. And then
Yeah.
there's all these other extra issues, right? Um, yes, a lot of times strokes are immediate, right? They happen kind of out of the blue.
Mm-hmm.
But
Same.
sometimes there's high blood pressure leading up to it, right? So if you're
Mm-hmm.
on blood pressure medications and you measure it every day and you keep track of it, and all of a sudden you notice that it's getting higher and higher and higher, and your meds are not stabilizing it, maybe
Yeah.
that's a reason to go to your doctor or go to the emergency room,
Yeah.
right? And you could potentially prevent that stroke from happening.
Yes.
And so it's just like things like that I think people don't necessarily connect and they don't always think about it that way. I mean, same thing for glucose, right? If it's gradually getting too low where you're going to pass out, or it's gradually getting too high where you're going to go into diabetic shock, we don't want either of those situations,
No.
you know?
Yeah. Being prepared, being aware, and yeah.
Yeah. And I think you mentioned something earlier that I think you'd appreciate as a emergency room nurse for so long. Oftentimes the whole section on baseline level of function, right? Like how do they
Yeah.
actually function every day at home? I'm an
Yes.
OT. So my role is to make sure people can go back home safely and that they are at their baseline functional level.
Yes.
And a lot of times they'll get up to us on the floors and, the communication, because the patient could not tell admitting or the ED how they function because they're confused or they're nonverbal or because whatever plethora of reasons, right?
Yeah.
They get to the floor and a lot of times in report, it's, oh, we're not really sure how they're doing at home, but we think they need a lot of help and they're pretty dependent. And we go in there and this person's up and at it and like in the room and like doing everything, right? And it's one of those situations where we could have gotten them up sooner if that like nursing would have gotten them up sooner if they had known that this was their baseline, you know?
Yeah, it's easy just to leave the patient laying in the bed, but you're right. You need to, yeah, it's that collective environment of bringing in the ancillary departments, right? You have all these expertise in one. That's what I do, kind of like the hospital. If worst case scenario, it's like just get them to the hospital because there's so many people that can provide those resources for you if you're feeling just like, I don't know what else to do.
Yeah.
Because we
Yeah.
are well trained. That's the thing. We're well trained. It's just bringing everyone together to create this integrative approach. That's my other thing that I'm very passionate about is why not, have this beautiful, I would love this. My perfect world would be to have this, like, go to your doctor's office and now you get to go into this area where you get nutrition and this area where you get, like mobility and this area. Anyway, where it's just like, this is what we should be doing. This is overall beautiful, like holistic care. And having Western medicine for those moments where you need it, there's a lot you can do to prevent it. So
There is. That is a dream for me too. Maybe we'll talk offline on that.
I know, I would love that. Yeah.
We've touched a lot on patient advocacy and what that looks like, for yourself, but also as a family member. What are some essential skills that you think caregivers need to develop in order to be effective advocates for their loved ones?
Oh, yeah. Number one, go to the appointments with them, please. You've got to have another voice. I'm just going to share a family story. My mom would send my dad to the doctor by himself, and I'm like, why did you do that? He does have some memory things. He's got some little, we call them glitches, right? It's not perfect, but he's not going to remember what was told to him. And so you really should be and I just say ask for permission because, maybe there's some pride there, right, in the patient of I don't need your help, I'm good, or they don't want you to know how sick they are. But maybe it's just the approach needs to change a little bit. Like, hey, if it's okay with you, I'd love to go with you and just see what the doctor has to say. And if there's anything else I can do to support you, I mean, it's just more leading with love, because I think, again, frustration can lead to like emotions like anger, fear, worry. But if we just go, hey, again, this person's responsible for themselves. I'm responsible for myself. They get to do whatever they get to do. If they want to eat 5,000 gallons of sugar, that's fine. We know that that's not going to be healthy, but if they want to, they get to do that. But like, if we just offered, how can I support you, my loved one, and offer that, just go with them whatever chance you can. And then bring those notes, like write your questions before you go. Oh, that's another section in here, you guys. It's my appointment section right here. It's in chronological order. You can see I have it kind of color shaded for one appointment, another appointment, another appointment. There's several pages in there that before you leave the house, like sit down with yourself or the person and write down the questions you have for that professional. And then there's space right below that to write what the professional is recommending for you. Because when you get into the appointment and they start firing off questions, how many, by a raise of hands that I cannot see, but I know you are raising your hand, can remember all the questions you had set before you, when you were going in? There's always that moment where you go, dang it, I was supposed to ask them that question and I forgot. And then you're like, do I make another appointment for that? Essentially, yeah, that's what you're supposed to do. But if you're prepared, do it at home, because fight or flight sets in, and fight or flight shuts down your brain. It's a protective mechanism, but it's just what your body's doing. It's protecting you, but it's not helping you at the moment, right? Mm-hmm. So get your questions written down, whether you have a Carefolio or not. This is just something I'm offering you as an advocate. And you have a voice, and the doctor went to school, but they are a human, just like you are, and all humans deserve respect, attention. So if they're talking too fast or saying words that you don't understand, just politely ask them, can you please slow down a little bit? Or, I'm sorry, do you mind saying that one more time? I'm just taking notes and I want to make sure I get this right, because I really value what you have to say, right? And so those are probably the two biggest things, because I realized I just got my eyes checked. She zipped through those instructions. I was like, I don't even know what that is. Could you write that down, please? And it was kind of like an eye roll and huff and puff, but I don't care. I need to know what that person just told me to do so I can take good care of myself. If I don't understand and I leave that office, I'm not going to do what she just told me to do. I'm sorry. It's not happening. And I know you would do the same thing. So just have them press pause, take a breath, answer your questions so that you understand it. Most offices do not print instructions. In the emergency room I worked for, the doctor was really good. They'd go in, everything was typed and everything was electronic at this point. And so you would get this beautiful discharge paperwork, and then I could go over and highlight the things. And then if there was something I wanted to add, I could actually handwrite that on the paper for you. But that does not happen in most doctors' offices. So, and maybe not even all ERs.
I am flabbergasted that you got an eye roll and a huff and puff at that request. I go out of my way to ask patients if they want me to write something down.
No, it was interesting. And so I just know and then they immediately sent me a survey. So I took it.
I hope you made your concerns known.
Oh, I offered to come in and give them an overview of my experience from the time I walked in the door until the time I left. It was pretty funny, and they have not reached out.
Not surprised. Oh, man. I think there's another side to this. Oftentimes, there's for the non-healthcare family caregiver who has no experience on the medical side of things, they often don't have, the education to know what they don't know, right? Or what questions to ask. But oftentimes there's also this knowledge gap in even understanding all the medications and what they're for, all the providers and why they see them, past medical history and all of this stuff. And I think a lot of times it creates this issue of their confidence in their ability to be able to take care of themselves. And I think something like this would actually help them really build confidence. So
Mhm.
I'm curious to know your thoughts on like how can caregivers build confidence when they're dealing with healthcare providers and complex medical systems? And is this, I mean, I think this is one way to do it, but what are your
Yeah.
thoughts?
Yeah, I'm just going to say Carefolio. You guys, it really is. It's everything in one place. Your recent blood work, that's why I love the binder format, is because you can punch 3 holes in any paperwork you're receiving, from discharge paperwork to recent, any exams, blood work, and pop it right in here, so that when a doctor says, hey, I'm going to order a CAT scan, you're going to be like, no, 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 you don't need to. Look at right here is my last CAT scan. Because one CAT scan to your abdomen is like 300 chest x-rays. Okay. So you do not want to be over radiated. And so this is one way to prevent duplicate tests from being done. The chronological appointment tab, like I said, keeps doctors' visits in order. So your one doctor can say, oh, you saw the ENT here, then your GI guy, and then your pulmonologist and your cardiologist. And everyone sees that, oh, there's a few people involved here. And then again, all the questions you've been asking, the doctors can see, oh, they asked that question. I wonder what, this other person did. So then they can start, just collecting, confidence. Yeah, is that you're able to communicate well and say, no, we don't need any more of that. Here's the blood work. And go talk to that guy because we just did this at this last appointment, because you can see that. And then the confidence is, I'm not going to forget anything because I wrote those questions down. And then there's your voice, and you just go, oh, look, no, my family member, we've been documenting that right here. And just gives them, it's just a great resource.
Remember when we had paper charts in the healthcare system?
Oh, yeah.
This is what that reminds me of. But now you're creating a paper chart for yourself at home.
Yes. Yep. Can I say something about that?
Yeah.
Somebody asked me, did you do an app, or are you making an app? And I think, yes, there is a place for an app down the road. But my husband, being the fireman, paramedic that he was, when they would go into a house, you're most likely not going to be able to Face ID your phone, open it up and tell them what app to go press, and then log into that app and then get all your information. But he said, with a book like this, we open it up and we can see everything we need to see, grab the patient and go, instead of spending all this extra time like pulling information. It's like, nope, here's the Carefolio, and they can put it on their lap and on the gurney and bring them into the ER. And when we see stuff like that, it's like hallelujah, because, from an ER perspective, we don't have to go digging for information.
Yeah. Every time I send someone an emergency care plan to create, I'm like, you can either print it and write it out, or you're welcome to fill it out online, but you're going to print it and you're going to put it on your refrigerator, because when that fireman or paramedic comes, that is the first place they're going to look to see what they need to know.
Exactly. Yeah. They were like, we wouldn't even know what to do with the phone. And I had that experience at an event I was at. The little old guy came in and I said, that's not his normal. It looks like so-and-so's having a stroke. And so we had to call an ambulance, and he couldn't even remember his son's name, you guys. He could not remember his son's name. So we tried to open his phone and look for these people. We couldn't get any information. So if you're relying on electronic charting too. Oh, by the way, our one hospital in Santa Barbara does not communicate with the other hospital that's just an hour away in Santa Maria, because they're 2 totally different electronic charting systems. So we had to go old school and call them and say, hi, medical records, can we request, we need a signed thing from the patient. Oh my gosh. Okay. So now we're just waiting and waiting and waiting.
Well, the patient is in no situation or ability to sign that over at this point. And also, fun fact, they don't have a healthcare power of attorney on file. So we're not really sure who's going to be making these decisions.
Lots of fun facts. But guess what? In your phone book section here at Carefolio, it has a spot for your advanced care, like for your power of attorneys, for financial and medical, but also your will, your trust, your financial institutions, all the emails and passwords. I literally created it's an estate planning, like an estate planning, right? But this is for your health.
Mm-hmm.
It's literally everything here in one place.
Yes, absolutely. I think we've touched on a bunch of this stuff already, but what are some common mistakes and pitfalls that you see caregivers make when they're advocating for their loved ones?
Yeah, I think it's waiting too long to get help, to seek help. So we did touch on it a little bit, as if you're tracking things well, you're going to be able to notice something's off, something's not right. I should probably make a phone call. Because when people come into the ER, they would always apologize for being there. Not always. Some of them would and say, "Oh, I'm having chest pain, but I'm sorry for being here. It's probably nothing." And I said, "Honey, you're guilty until we prove you innocent here. So let's just figure it out. But wouldn't it be great if it's nothing? And then we can send you home. But right now, we're going to do some things." But then there were other times when they would come in and they are so sick that now it's hard. It's really hard to save your life. And then when we do, it's a long recovery. So seek help sooner. Okay. And then recognize that through tracking. And then lack of communication between specialists. So just having better, lack of communication. So again, if you're overdoing tests, underdoing tests, that person doesn't know that you're over here with this person. You could end up with a misdiagnosis and then those unnecessary tests. Not having a designated point of contact, like too many voices lead to confusion for sure. Again, if I've had families with 9 children and I'm a family of 8 kids. And I'll tell you right now, we all have different opinions on mom and dad. And I watched that happen in the ER. And we had to say, look, let's have a huddle. And we had to pull the doctor, the nurse, like everybody in to try to help come to an agreement on something. And we can still do that. But if you have one person that you're saying, no, I want this person to make decisions for me, then that takes the load off of everyone else too.
Yeah. I've shared this show. I've shared this story on the show before, and it's related to the fact that I had one patient in the hospital who, she came in on an acute issue, but ended up in the ICU on a breathing tube, ventilator, all the stuff, right? And she didn't have a designated healthcare power of attorney. Nothing on file, no post forms, no, nothing, no advance directive, just nothing. And she had 5 kids. And the time came to decide basically if she would get a feeding tube or not, because at this point she had been on a ventilator for a while. She obviously wasn't getting the nutrition she needed. And so there was a discussion around feeding tube. And of course, some of the kids said, yes, we should do everything, get mom the feeding tube. And the other kids were like, no, she's going to suffer. Like, let's just end this, right? And this went on for days to the point that we had to get ethics involved at the hospital, right? And how long that ethics process can take and how many people have to get involved when something like that comes up. And all of this to also then go on to understand what the chances of recovery were. Okay, she gets this feeding tube, and then what? Is she going to come off of a ventilator? Does she have a chance at surviving this, right? Because if she doesn't, and we go through with the feeding tube, what are the ethical concerns there, right?
Yeah.
And this went on, and ultimately what ended up happening was, one, this entire family basically lived at the hospital for over a month, trying to go back and forth, figuring stuff out. This entire time, the patient herself was bedridden, non-communicative, on a breathing tube, likely suffering. And the kids were all under tremendous stress and just not doing well either, right? Ultimately, the patient passed away. And all that struggle could have been avoided if there was an advance directive or a power of attorney or a mutual understanding of majority rule, right? When there's an odd number of kids, sometimes that works, but just no conversations, no paperwork is a recipe for disaster during a crisis.
Yeah, there's a spot right behind in the About Me section. I have that emergency medical form. And in there, it says I have advanced care directives, see attached. So it is so important. You are never like, I mean, right? Because there's traumatic situations. I worked in the ER. I know that none of us are guaranteed tomorrow. I hate to break it to you all, but you think I'm going to be 95, 100 when I die. Well, I mean, maybe if you're lucky. But all of us can fill out an advanced care directive. And what's beautiful about that is exactly that. Like my husband doesn't have to wonder, do I leave her on this ventilator? Because the answer is no. And I've told him that. And it's written on paper and it's signed. And my attorneys put his stamp of approval on it. And so,
Yeah.
I mean, it takes away the thought of him or any guilt, right? Because now it's like, oh, I don't want to be the one to make that decision. I've heard family members say that, like, no way, I can't live with myself if I'm the one that pulled the plug, But it's like, no, you're actually giving them dignified death is what you're giving them, because medical trauma is not good. And I feel like as caregivers, because we're caregivers, we're caring for the patient and we're doing all this stuff that is traumatizing their body. And they feel it, whether they can communicate or not. They're feeling all the extra pokes and all these procedures. And that I could have a whole end of life discussion with you, Pooja, on things where like, just let them go. Like they are knocking on heaven's door and we're pulling them back. And that to me breaks my heart.
Yeah. But I think really do you really want to put that pressure on your children to have to make that decision?
Yeah.
Right? Like as individuals, like I would never want to subject somebody else to have to make that decision, not knowing what I would have wanted and then them having to live with the decision that they made.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's, and I think it's just a mindset thing. We have to, like, people are like, oh, if I fill out that paperwork, then I'm saying I'm going to die tomorrow or something. Like, it's okay to talk about it. Death is, we're all terminal. We're all going there. So you might as well, like, again, be as proactive as possible. Right. And then do the things to stay alive and healthy, because we want to thrive. We don't just want to survive either. So that's the other thing, is by advocating for yourself, is you're saying, I really am taking charge of my health. Even if you're a high performer, but you're like confused with what to do next, start taking charge.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then one other thing is just forgetting to care for themselves. Like I really wanted to talk about that, because that's the very first page you come to in my book, is caring for the caregiver. You cannot care for yourself or for others if you have not filled your cup first. There's statistics that say 50% of caregivers will die before the person they're caring for. And that nearly happened to my mother-in-law, right? With her colon cancer. Their health starts to suffer and they're not paying attention because they're pouring all their time and attention into that person. So this is why, like, self-care is not selfish. It's going to prevent burnout. And, advocacy, I'll just leave it at this, is strongest when the caregiver is also well supported and rested.
Yeah. You can't pour from an empty cup.
No. Yeah.
As we're getting close to the end of the hour here, I do want to end with some broader reflections that you've had throughout your very extensive career and experience in caregiving. What lessons have you learned from your caregiving journey that you'd like to share with the listeners? And how do you envision Carefolio helping other caregivers in their journey?
Oh, yeah. So number one, organization is power. So it not only reduces stress, but it leads to better outcomes. We've very much established that. Trusting your instincts. You can speak up. I want you to know that you have a voice. Please use it, because the doctors need to hear it. And the doctor doesn't. The doctor's getting a snapshot of that person right then and there. It's like I did for my mother-in-law. It's like, no, here's her story. She's been struggling. Let's push for that CAT scan, because they weren't going to order it at first, actually. And so, and then you said it, Pooja, you can't pour from an empty cup. Caregiver burnout is real. We give everything to our loved ones, sometimes not leaving anything for ourselves. So what I've learned is that not being selfish with your care. You need to if you're exhausted, overwhelmed, and then neglecting your own health, your ability to provide for them is going to suffer. I mean, just think about it, right? And so it's essential that you're taking good care of yourself. And then ask for the help and accept the support. Do not do this alone. So many people, and I have a million examples, but I'll just say so many people try to shoulder this entire burden, and they feel guilty if they ask for help, but it's a team effort. It's just like it is. It's a team effort. And the person you're caring for is going to love having others involved too. Sometimes it's a fresh set of eyes that will see something you have not been seeing, like degradation in like your mental health or cognition, like cognitive function. When you're with that person every day, you don't see the small little changes that are happening. But if someone hasn't seen the person in maybe even a month or two, they're going to notice the bigger change. So having more people involved is beautiful. And then just delegating tasks, seeking outside resources. There's a lot of free stuff out there. So many people say, I can't afford to get anything. You don't need to. It's like I found people to carpool with my kids. We all did it for each other for free. It's like we co-opt is what we did. Mm-hmm. And it was brilliant. And so at the end of the day, caregiving, it is one of the hardest but most rewarding journeys a person can make or take. This is not forever, you guys. And so there's some genuine, beautiful, priceless moments that you're going to have with these people that you love if you will just accept what's happening as part of life's journey. And it can be when you're 42, dying of pancreatic cancer. We had some really incredible moments with my friend. Incredible moments where she was serving us while she was down to, I'm not kidding, 65 pounds, just bones. She was carrying blankets on her arms outside to us, or her friends. We were sitting around talking, and we thought she was sleeping. Nope. She got her little self up and carried out blankets, just wanting to make sure we were comfortable. I know there's a lot of moments like that just embrace it, because from that moment on, I think we had 2 weeks with her total.
Yeah.
So, just know you're doing a great job. You're doing a great job. So, and you're not alone. There's a lot of caregivers out there.
Yeah. Are there any current trends or innovations in caregiving or patient advocacy that you're seeing that you're most excited about?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I love this. All these wearable devices. I took my watch off because I didn't want it buzzing my arm if someone was ringing me. But the smartwatches we have, it'll track your heart rate. If you fall down, it'll call 911. The glucose monitors that people are wearing, if you guys have seen the little white patches on the back of people's arms, that is like your glucose in the moment. So you can eat something and you can see immediately what that just did to your blood sugars. So I feel like it's beautiful. It's helping you make a decision in the moment. Like, whoa, that bowl of ice cream was probably not my best choice, but if I eat this high protein meal, wow, my blood sugar stays stable all day long. Maybe I'll eat more of that, And then telemedicine, I think that's one thing. There's a couple things good that came out of the pandemic, but telemedicine, like, think about it. If you have somebody who their mobility is impaired, their cognition is not right, they don't understand, it is more trauma to get them to a doctor's appointment, but it's necessary. Telemedicine.
Yeah.
There's something there that's beautiful about it. Of course, an in-person visit is way better because they can listen to your lungs. But I can look across the room at an ER and say, you're sick, you're not sick, I need to bring you in first. You can wait. There's stuff that you learn over time that doesn't take a stethoscope. When you can hear lung sounds from across the room sometimes, you don't need that stethoscope always. And there's other things, like if you have those devices, you can report that to your physician. My mom was seeing a pulmonologist in Los Angeles. She lives 3 hours north. And they had all these devices, hooked her up to a pulse ox. She had the computer, everything they provided for her so they could have the appointment from her home. And she was getting monitored. It was wild.
That's amazing.
So that is incredible.
That's amazing.
The shift from from reactive to proactive care, I think, is beautiful. And then Gosh, there's something else I wanted to say about that one. The telemedicine too is just less stressful on the person. Think about it. They're in their own home. Then you can just direct the camera, follow them around, whatever you need to do to get that appointment and whatever. And then AI is amazing. I love AI a lot, but it is being used, and I'm so fascinated by this. Why not? It's analyzing your patient records, predicting health risks, and improving diagnosis accuracy. So I'm glad to see that we're using things to our benefit. Of course, we still need that person, that human, thank goodness. But just those are some things I'm excited about.
That's amazing. For caregivers listening today, what's one actionable item or tip that they can use to improve their advocacy efforts?
I'm going to let you guys guess. No, document everything. Underline, bold.
Yes.
So yeah, at the end of the day, the more organized and proactive you are, the stronger your voice becomes in advocating for your best care and your loved ones. And we all deserve it, right? Your loved ones do, and so do you. So documentation.
Yeah. And it's also much, much, much less burdensome.
Yes.
Phyllis, how do people find you, or if they're interested, the wonderful Carefolio you've created?
Oh, thank you, Bojet. So go to Carefolio, and I'll put there's the book Carefolio.com, and you can order your book there. I also have a one-on-one phone call that I do with caregivers or people who really want it's me on the phone with you, a Zoom. I'll record a Zoom with you for an hour, and we go over tailoring your Carefolio just for you. So you can purchase the book. You can purchase the bundle. I have refills on that page, and it's actually now translated into Spanish, you guys. So there's downloadable versions in English and Spanish that you can just send off to a printer and have it spiral bound yourself, or it just comes delivered where you can open this thing and start using it right now. So 2 different options there. If you want to email me, it's hello@carefolio.com. You can find me on Facebook, the Phyllis Anderson. I'm sorry, that's Instagram, the Phyllis Anderson. Facebook, it's a little bit different. It's Phyllis, and then my maiden name is Halsell, Halsell Anderson. That's how it shows up on Facebook right now. I have a Carefolio caregiving community on Facebook, and I have an @Carefolio on Instagram too, and a YouTube channel, Phyllis Anderson. So I'm everywhere.
You're everywhere. They can't miss you if they try to look for you. Phyllis, this was such a fantastic conversation, and always a breath of fresh air to talking with somebody who shares a very similar practice and similar thoughts on the current state of caregiver needs. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you, Pooja, for having me, and God bless you all in your caregiving journey.